Welcome to the Messy City Podcast, where we talk with the people who design, plan, build, develop, or even just think about how to create beautiful, successful, and humane cities and towns. Let's learn from each other and create places we truly care about. Welcome back to the Messy City Podcast. This is Kevin Klinkenberg. I've had a theme on recent episodes talking to people who just have the audacity to do things. And I like to talk with people who have created something unique or just taken something under their wing that maybe others thought couldn't be done. And along those lines, I've got a guy here today who's created one of the most or helped bring to life one of the most interesting, unique projects I have ever seen here in Kansas City or anywhere. And that is converting an old railroad bridge over a river into effectively an entertainment complex and more. And so I'm super excited today to have Mike Zeller on the podcast. Mike, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure, Kevin.
So I guess, Mike, where I want to start is you're obviously like a lifelong developer, right? You've been doing this for your whole life, and you're the guy with the fancy suits and everything else, right? That's how this works.
My portfolio included some tree houses and dams as a kid growing up on a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
No, I was a public television guy.
Yeah,
we're here working for Kansas City PBS.
Right, and so you're somebody who had no real experience putting a project together or anything.
Not a real estate project.
Right.
I developed projects, TV projects, and other, little more integrated things that involve community engagement, which was about taking an idea out and finding allies and finding funding, but nothing like this.
Yeah. So, I mean, the part about finding funding was probably super helpful, at least as a way for you to get into doing something like this.
Yeah. I probably couldn't have pulled this off had I not spent 8 or 10 years as a development director.
Yeah.
And I didn't start out there. I started in education, but it gave me entree into the Kansas City philanthropic community.
Yeah. Well, where I want to start, I know you've told this story a few times, and I've heard it, but most of the people listening won't have heard it. Where did this idea come from to take an old railroad bridge and do something different with it?
Well, it was kind of almost an accident. So I went to high school at North Kansas City High School, which is one of the older schools in the city. It's on the north side of the Missouri River, and one of my friends ran cross country, and the coach ran him across the lower deck of the ASB bridge, which is a railroad bridge, and it had this wooden plank crosswalk there. And he told us about it. And of course, from through the rest of high school and then in college, when we would come back to Kansas City on the weekends, many nights we'd go pick up a case of old style beer and go hang out on the ASB bridge and do what 18-year-old boys do. Peed in the river, climbed up to the top. We stepped on and off of freight trains. But mostly we just admired the size of the structure and the city reflected in the mighty mow. And, we don't have a mountain or an ocean around here, but it was inspiring to us all. And it's just so big and powerful, yet so silent. And, and then I went on with my life from there. But I've always thought about the rivers in Kansas City and how we ought to do more with them. And that's a very nearly universally held sentiment, I think, in our town.
Yeah.
And so a friend brought a boat back in 2007. I went to high school. I graduated high school in 82. So a lot of time passed in between. I lived in different countries along the way, too. I was in Taipei, and then I spent about 3.5 years in Munich. And, parts of the world where they have a lot of old fabric that gets reinvented. So I kind of had a little bit of that perspective, I think, because I just saw so much of it, but never thought of myself as a reinventor of infrastructure.
Yeah.
But fast forward to 2007, and my oldest son and I had built a potato gun, because that's what we do here in the Midwest. And he and I and his two younger brothers and my wife and another couple, we're on just a flat bottom boat with a 100-horse engine and going up and down the Missouri River, looking at our own town from the river. And I said, let's go up to Kansas, because I didn't really know anything about it. It's a tributary to the Missouri here. This confluence is probably why the metro exists where it does. And so we're going up the river, and there's a lot of bridges. I noticed that, and we were, blasting potato away at the bottom. And as we're moving south, we came into a clearing, and there was a bridge in front of us that I didn't know what it was. And I think we all got kind of quiet looking at it, puzzling. And we could tell it was a railroad bridge. As we got closer, there were some missing tracks, and we realized, it's an abandoned railroad bridge here. And I said, God, look at that thing. Somebody really ought to do something with that. Maybe put a restaurant out there and call it Chicken on a Bridge. It was just a dumb quip, chicken on a bridge, chicken shack or something. I didn't really mean anything by it, other than inside of that quip was kind of a big idea that a robust structure, which that looked to be and later proved to be like a railroad bridge, in the middle of a big American metropolitan area of 2,200,000 people, was valuable space where you could have a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And, I spent the next 10 years trying to get somebody else who would think of a bridge like land and treat it like land. And then as at a birthday party, went down to BB's lawn side, and our friend Dennis Strait, who's been on this show, you told me, gave me a birthday card, because I was always talking to Dennis because he was an architect, and he thought it was a great idea, which kind of encouraged me. And it was my 50th birthday, and he gave me Chicken on a Bridge as a birthday card. And I really started thinking about it. And I didn't have any success getting anybody else to do it. So I decided to take the entrepreneurial leap. And that was 12 years ago. I'm 62 now, I realize. And really, I've probably been a social entrepreneur. I lead an LLC, which is in the business of making money and paying back our investors, and I'd like to make some money myself. But it's bigger than that. It's also like a steel park over a river with some really significant and special amenities that animate it and help pay for the activation and the maintenance of the rest of the bridge.
Yeah. So once you get together with Dennis and you're talking about it on your 50th birthday, like, where do you go from there? Were you working full time still at that point?
I was a KCPT then. Yeah. I left not long after that, and started doing this project on the side. I helped tee up the capital campaign for the Rabbit Hole, and I led a failed initiative to reboot experiential learning public school in the vacant Southwest High School building. Okay. That cost me 2 years of my life. I'd like to get back.
Well, the Rabbit Hole's pretty cool.
The Rabbit Hole's great. Yeah, and I didn't do that much. I just helped them kind of frame it up and take it out to the community. Yeah. They beat me. They got open before I did. Deb and Pete.
Yeah. That's an incredible local deal. So where did you go first then to find somebody who was willing to say, this is a cool idea. I want to put the first dollar in to make this happen?
Well, I guess the first step was to get the bridge inspected to find out if it was even possible to do anything with it. Right. And so somehow I heard about a Mid-America Regional Council grant that was available to the cities, Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. So I wrote it up, and I persuaded some elected officials on both sides to sponsor it. And Mark gave them $150,000. I think I put in $10,000 of my own money. And that paid for Transcends, a local engineering firm, to send people up on cables and all around on the bridge looking at it. And they came back with what we thought, that it's a battleship, and it's built to carry locomotives. And unlike car bridges, it was never salted in the wintertime. So it was in much better condition than, say, the Buck O'Neill Bridge, which is actually much younger, a car bridge in Kansas City that the city was thinking about doing something similar on. But it was shot through with rust because it had been salted 75 winters. Yeah, that was the first step, was getting that study back, that there was something there worth developing, that the land was good.
Yeah, and for context, there's so much about this that's unique. But for anybody not familiar, you've got It's a railroad bridge over the Kansas River. And it's in the state of Kansas, but it was owned by the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and it's really just kind of off the state line a little bit.
Correct.
Yeah. So as you looked at all that, did you know that going into it, like that it had that kind of ownership deal?
It's been so long now. I don't even remember how I learned that the city of Kansas City, Missouri owned it. I started knocking at their door, their real estate door, and they didn't know what to make of me. They kept giving me boilerplate leases for like their properties in 18th and Vine that talked about abiding by municipal ordinances. And, it was hard for them to get their head around the fact that they were the landlord, so to speak, of a property that was a railroad bridge, which is weird enough, but it was not only in another city, it was in another state.
Yeah.
And there's a history there. I don't know if you want to go into that, but it's just barely in another state, but it is.
Right. And it's sort of tied to, this was the part of town where we had the stockyards, and it was the old days, they called it the Central Industrial District. But we all know it as the West Bottoms, where all the meatpacking plants used to be, and the stockyards and everything else.
Yeah, it was an industrial area. And this bridge was built in 1905 by the American Bridge Company for the Rock Island Railroad. That's why we honor that name. We call it the Rock Island Bridge. And it was built in 1905. Two original 100-yard trusses. And then they added a third smaller truss on when the Corps widened the levee in 1921. So now it's the three trusses together about 700 feet tall, 700 feet long. My old partner, Mike Gladden, liked to say, if you stood it up, it's taller than the St. Louis Arch.
Yeah. So at what point did you have somebody do a drawing or any kind of, even a sketch, like a sketch idea of like what this
I've got
could
some really funny old sketches. We'd sit at Charlie Hooper's, Dennis, and another friend, Tom, and Mike Levengood, and we would drink beer and sketch into napkins and just sort of dream how we could activate a railroad bridge. It took us a while to even come up with the idea of the cantilevers, believe it or not, because we thought we would have to support them from below was our assumption. And then we learned, no, steel would be good. You just, there's a limit as to how far you can go out. It gets more expensive every foot. And then the thought of going double decker came much later.
Yeah. So where was the point where you you were looking at it, you're like, this thing could really happen. Like this could actually be a real project.
So I ended up getting a lease from Kansas City, Missouri. Brought John McGurk on, who had been Sly James' chief of staff, and he had rotated out and was in private practice. And we were friendly acquaintances. And I said, John, I'm having a hard time getting anybody's attention on this. Can you help me? And he's like, yeah. So I think within about a month or 6 weeks, we had a lease unanimously passed by city council. That's when we had standing.
Okay.
And I wanted to do incremental development. Chicken on a bridge, the vision in my mind, I think, it's been so long, was to do like what Frank Hicks did down at Knuckleheads, this great saloon, live music saloon in Kansas City in the Missouri River bottoms, where he started with a simple house, and then he added on a small hall, and then became an outdoor venue, and then the motor shop next door. He did everything piece by piece. And I thought we would just have some twinkly lights and a stock tank with full of ice and yard beers and a stool for singer-songwriters and see where it went from there and have a simple wooden track path in and out.
Right.
Well, after getting the lease from Casey Moe, within a very short time, some Kansas officials that rubbed right up against Casey Moe on the state line came to us and said, hey, Eastern Wyandotte County that makes up much of KCK, we lack public health infrastructure, walking it. They lack trails for family to walk around on. And levee tops are a great place for a trail because you already got a trail, really. And you're up high and they overlook the river. They're kind of nice places to be. And they'd been securing the rights from the levee board and bringing some pea gravel about 5 miles up downstream to the bridge, and they needed to cross that bridge to get to the trail on the other side. Because if they stayed on that western side of the levee, there were some engineering challenges over there. There was a rail yard, and the bridges were lower, and there was walls. And we said, well, how's that going to work if people are riding their 10 speeds across here? Because we want to have chicken on a bridge.
Right.
And they said, well, it can be a dismount zone. And I thought, that's great, because, we didn't really have any standing. I didn't have any track record. I didn't have any money. And having a city as a partner, presumably they could find some money, which they did eventually through a hotel motel tax that they get paid back. And that's when I started thinking this thing could really go.
Huh.
It also set off some complications because their electeds, they didn't like incremental development.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the whole finished plan.
Yeah.
And that put a lot of pressure on us and me in particular to figure everything out all at once and build it all at once.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. So where are you at this point? Like how far, what year are you in this process when they're
This is about 2017. It's when we got the lease from Casey Moe, and maybe 2018 by then. Remember, I'm doing some other stuff on the side. I'm not working this 40 hours a week.
Right. So then at that point, then you got to go raise money. And how do you determine, how do you even determine how much money you need to raise for at this point? Because this is such a unique deal that nobody's ever done.
Yeah. I should have written all this stuff down along the way. I'll reconstruct as best I can, but take it from what it's worth. I've been like fighting a war for 10 years and kind of forget these early battles. The whole thing, though, I'll tell you, finding the money, getting the legal situation straightened away, the engineering, the design that meets the program, figuring out what the program is really, both the public needs program of a public crossing and public gathering spaces, plus private activities that would generate money to capitalize, to repay our investors. All that had to be figured out at the same time, and we groped our way to this. I never had this. I think where we landed on all of those fronts is a pretty elegant solution. It's actually a P7. You've heard of P3s?
Yeah.
Public-private partnership?
Yeah.
One of our investors is a pretty renowned guy in Kansas City, David Brain, and he's very creative, and he founded Entertainment Properties REIT a long time ago. And he likes putting letters together like that. Yeah. And so this is a public I just back up and say infrastructure renewal projects like this, they can be really potent tools for a city to redefine and redevelop whole quarters, like the High Line, probably most famously in New York City. And our project's already doing that, but they're a real heavy lift. It was too heavy of a lift for a little startup with no cash register to fund by ourselves. It was too much for the city by itself. I mean, they just wouldn't do that. They wouldn't spend that kind of money on such a speculative project, nor philanthropy.
Right.
And we've been invited to join the Highline Network, and we're a member of these preeminent infrastructure renewal projects in North America, U.S., Canada, Mexico. And they're intrigued by us because of this constellation, this barn raising that we cobbled together. So it's the public sector, the city of Kansas City, Kansas, plus the state, Department of Commerce, and the Department of Transportation, because it is an alternative, put funds in. It's private. We sold $7.5 million of equity based on the fact that we had have a 66-year lease on this very unique space, and we had a compelling business plan, and we had to go before these investor groups. Now, I will say we were benefited both by having public and other monies alongside, and the fact that many of the investors, not all of them, were civic investors. They wanted to do this because they want to make Kansas City better, and they certainly expect to get their money back, which they will. It's going great, and they want to make a profit. But I don't think that was their only motive. It was for most of them, it was a double motive. So it was a public-private philanthropic, because the bridge is owned now by Kansas City, Kansas. Kansas City, Missouri transferred it to them for $1. Once they got in and wanted to be a partner, they wanted to own the bridge. And that was fine by us because we were just middle-class guys. I didn't want to own a bridge. I was terrified of the liability of needing to fix it, or, that it could bankrupt us. And, so local philanthropy donated to the construction of the public crossing and the public restrooms. There's about half of the cost of the project. It turned out to be public space. The usual Hellsbergs, the usual suspects, if you're in Kansas City, the Hellsbergs, the Sunderlands, the Dickinson family, Stowers, these people that are always donating and making Kansas City a better place. We got pretty close to the end and we ran out of money. Because I was in this foot race. I had to start the project without having all the money in hand. You had to start to get money. That's the hell of it all. That was the state of Kansas says we need to see construction workers going. I was like, so okay, I set
before they would put any money in.
Yeah,
they wanted to see actual.
They want to see it was going. So that started a foot race. And so I was still designing the darn thing, and my partner, Mike Ladden, was right alongside with me with that. And it was a pretty scary process, We're working, we're building this thing, and I'm applying for grants, and we're going before investor committees, and we're looking under every rock, and we had to make some changes to the program. We had a great design by Gould Evans, which is now Multi-Studio. But some of our assumptions about the program evolved. We had like 4 food and beverage tenants. Then we realized that's ridiculous because they all have their own prep area and it's redundant. Then we went to 2, and now we realized we just need 1 with a good general menu. And we added more toilets because we realized we have a facility that could hold more than 1,500 people, but when I had 4 bathrooms, that's a problem. And anytime you change anything in a construction project, the price goes up, So, painfully, we ran out of money and the project stopped nearly 2 years ago now. And we had some CDFIs, one of them lined up in Chicago, but that didn't pan out. So it was about 7 months until we could get a loan, and it was through a local bank. That's the 4th P, patient capital, and that got everything going again. Although that was expensive. Anytime you stop a construction project, there's costs involved, and there's also revenue generating opportunities for every sub involved to just gig you,
Right.
And some of their costs are totally legit too. And then the next P was some pretty great Kansas City companies. There's probably 40 or more companies that provided material or labor at free or reduced cost. Just a lot of guidance too for free. Probably the best example, though, is Lathrop GPM, one of the big Kansas City law firms, has done all of the legal work pro bono. And I've never heard from their marketing department. So it's real corporate philanthropy. And I would sheepishly call one of their partners about every 6 months and give me an update on this dragging project. And
I know what their hourly rates are. So that's a good donation.
Oh my God. And they're still helping us. We're almost across the finish line, and they're going to cut us loose, and we're going to start paying our own way. But we couldn't have done it without them, frankly. This wouldn't have happened without Lathrop.
Yeah. And part of that was I think at the groundbreaking or at that ULI event I went to, one of the things that was mentioned was this was not even part of a parcel, the bridge itself. So somehow that there had to be a legal framework had to be created that didn't exist to do this.
Correct. Yeah. It didn't have an address, didn't even have a name. They don't name railroad bridges.
Right. So how do you get around all that?
I think they do sometimes, but this one didn't have a name.
Yeah. So how do you get around not having a parcel?
Well, we created one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how hard was that?
Well, I didn't do it. I don't know. We'd have to ask Paul Lewis at Lathrop, and I don't think it was that hard. It's just a process. It was novel.
Yeah.
They created a parcel, and then they did a condominium plat. Also, there's a public use unit and a private use unit, and we pay ad valorem taxes on the public use unit, and there's some revenue share for the city, and there's a CID. They get their money back. All along the way, you do something like this, you guys got to be thinking about your partners and try to figure out what everybody's needs are and how they can win.
Yeah. At what point were you looking around and trying to find other examples of anybody else who'd done something like this?
I think I looked around early on, and I couldn't find anything like this outside of, famously the Ponte Vecchio Bridge. Everybody thinks of that in Florence, which funny, I have a photo in our bathroom of my wife sitting on the Ponte Vecchio Bridge 5 years before I met her. She led tour buses around Europe. But that I haven't been there myself, but the way what I've been told is that they brought electricity out. You can buy some jewelry and stuff, but it's not full on treating a bridge like land and making more land as we have with cantilevers and going double decker and doing really land-like things. There's 5 buildings on this bridge that are, modern HVAC buildings within the existing barrel of the bridge up on both levels. And then there's 2 big indoor-outdoor spaces. 16 bathrooms. We have we brought all the utilities out. There's an alley. There's a dumbwaiter that can lift 4,500 pounds up to the top deck. There's an ADA elevator. It's all land stuff on a bridge. When I wonder where all the money went, I go into the mechanical room and look around. The walls are just crowded with infrastructure.
Yeah, I can imagine. And bringing all that infrastructure out onto a bridge itself is an incredible endeavor.
Yeah, and the engineers and the architects, everybody got very creative, and we did a lot of creative problem solving along the way. And we also used space like we were on a boat instead of on a pad, at the edge of a metro. Yeah. We didn't have that. But my old boss in public television, Cliff Keel, he used to talk a lot about the power of constraints and how when you're constrained, it forces creativity.
Yeah.
And the bridge is a really fun place to be. And I think because we had to get really creative to solve for these problems of how do you have usable spaces as a commercial kitchen or a restaurant or a bathroom on a bridge over a river. Yeah. So it's delightful in that way. I think we all like creativity and we respond to it.
Right.
Whereas if I just drawn something on a blank piece of paper, it would never be that interesting.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of I think when I was a freshman in architecture school, if I remember right, I think the first project we actually got to design was we had to basically design the interior of a sailboat, like the living space.
Yeah.
Yeah. An incredible challenge. So, I mean, even thinking from that, like the structural issues that your team must have had to try to figure out, because bridges do move a little bit, not much, but they're moving a little bit.
Yeah. You want them to move.
There.
Steel is elastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So have you, as you looked around
Sorry.
So beyond,
Apologies.
No, it's fine. Beyond the Ponte Vecchio, there's literally nothing else in the country you've seen that is like this, where somebody's activated a bridge like this over a river.
No, not in this country. There's a tea shop on a rail bridge in South Korea over a lake. There's a bridge in Turkey where they've added some stuff to the lower deck within the existing bridge that's a little close to what we're doing. It's just in a line. But I still say we've hit upon a new idea. Yeah. But I got to say, I don't know how many thousands or millions of people have looked at bridges that aren't being used and said, why don't they put something on there, right? I mean, and we used to do that in civilizations, but for some reason we stopped doing it. I myself said it when the ASB bridge shut down, and when they pulled the car deck off the top.
Yeah.
As a 25-year-old or something, I remember saying that. I guess we just did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I should mention, this is actually still really fresh. You've actually been open for business, about a month?
Yeah, we opened on April Fool's Day, which was appropriate.
Yeah. And talk about how it's been kind of working out the kinks with having people on the bridge.
We've been slammed. It's very busy, especially when the weather's nice. It helps our tenants have really great food. Yeah. We were like, we don't want no Worlds of Fun food, which is the theme park here in town, right. And it's very good food. Both the walk-up window and the sit-down restaurant, which is a water-themed, fish-themed restaurant. And we had more than 1,500 people out there a week ago Saturday night, dancing. They were all over that bridge. It was a warm evening. We've had a stretch of rainy, cold weather, which has kept some of the numbers down, although you can eat in the restaurant, protected by screens that go up and down, and there's glass walls at the ends. But we are busier on busy days. But so far we're about 50% ahead of what we projected for the bank.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then also you have the ability to rent this as an event space, and
the top deck is called American Royal Hall. Yeah. And it's about about 5,000 square foot event space with women's room, men's room, a green room, ADA elevator, and a 55-foot long bar, 60 feet above the Kansas River, looking north at the historic Strawberry Hill neighborhood in KCK.
How many people can you have on the bridge structurally? What's your capacity?
The bridge itself doesn't really have a structural limit for people. Yeah. And a public trail doesn't really have a limit either. The top deck we're limited by egress.
Okay.
They're more worried about fire, even though fires. The bridge is the buildings in the middle are sprinkled, and everything is made out of concrete and steel. You'd have to bring an accelerant to have a fire on the bridge, but so we're double safe there. But we still fall under those building code limitations according to the width of the stairs and the width of the bridge itself to egress people off, and just comfort too. But between about 1,900 people, is the limit, and we have, I think, 42 cameras on the bridge, and we're spooling up its AI systems. It'll be able to tell us how many people are on the bridge all the time.
Wow. And also it's early enough that the trail connections that you talked about at the beginning, those still are not fully in place.
Yes. The trail on the west side that was in existence that caused the city to come to us hasn't yet been linked to the bridge. There's bulldozers over there working on that right now. On the east side, which people call the Missouri side, the state line is about the base of the stairs. The bridge is perfectly east-west. And the city of Kansas City, Kansas did a fantastic job of redeveloping that area, and they brought in a lot of earth and piled it up behind the levee and made a plateau park. About the size of, 15 tennis courts, something like that. And it's great because it's up high enough where you can see the river. That's a challenge we have in Kansas City with these two big rivers. They're leveed, and, there's just not a lot of places where you can sit and regard the Missouri or the Kansas. But here you can here. This is one of them. I should say there's another development famously downstream from us. You go 2 miles north to the confluence of the Missouri, take a right and go another 2 miles east, and it's the CPKC Stadium, the world's first dedicated women's stadium for soccer. And the owners of that were on our bridge about 2 or 3 years ago, and Angie Long got excited. She said, "Oh my God, our true believers could come out here before a match, and they got a lot of people who like to kayak and put into the current and take the current down to the stadium for a match and arrive by boat," which in Kansas City, where it might be the biggest metro in the U.S. that's a river town, really. It hasn't really gotten our arms around a river. So that's kind of delightful for us to think about using our rivers to get someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing because I've been down there by the river a lot. One of my favorite places to ride a bike to is Caw Point Park out there.
That's a great look at the city, isn't it?
It's an incredible view. But otherwise, you don't really get out on the river very much.
No, and we demonize our rivers. They're muddy. They're lowland rivers. But we're never going to have a mountain or an ocean in Kansas City. But we got these two big rivers, and then we have lesser rivers, the Blue and the Platte. And they're a network, and maybe we need to start thinking of them that way and treating them that way.
Yeah. What do you think about? I had a friend who was asking me about this the other day. What do you think about the potential of like riverboat passenger traffic, even just like little ferries or something? Do you think that's possible on the Missouri and Kansas? Like think about going to Parkville or back
sure, it's possible. So some friends and I bought a couple of faux riverboats during it was a COVID fever decision. They theme park had failed, and they're fake. They're barges 20 feet by 60 feet, double decker. And we've got them cradled and are in the process of selling them to some guys. But we thought about getting into that business, and it's pretty hard business because it's like starting up an airline. I mean, you got to work with the NTSB, and you got to have a riverboat pilot's license, which requires so many thousands of hours, if I recall correctly. You don't get into hauling passengers on water cheaply. It could happen, but there's a lot of barriers to entry into that.
Yeah. So I also want you to talk about the other big idea that you mentioned when we were out there at that ULI event. Somebody checked you about, okay, what's the next big thing that you're thinking about? And you had this whole idea about almost sort of like damming up the Kansas River, essentially.
Yeah. Now, I would lead that with clearly it would need to be studied. You need an engineering environmental study, and but I'd follow that up with a lot of other cities have done it. Lady Bird Lake is this signature feature of Austin. It's just they dammed the Little Colorado River. Oklahoma City, Wichita. It's very common in the United States. Now, the Kansas has a history of flooding, so people twitch when you talk about doing anything on it. Rightly so. But there's this thing called an inflatable dam,
Yeah.
and they're pretty inexpensive relatively. The idea, Tempe, Arizona has one that's kind of interesting. You build a concrete collar on both sides of the river and then a concrete apron across the base of it. And you could build a concrete box on one side to make a lock where small craft could come and go. Because the Kansas is not a commercial navigable water. There's no commerce on that other than commercial, guys fishing,
Right.
small boats. And then you take like a big sausage tube made out of something like 4-inch thick steel belted radial, really hardy rubber material. And then you pump that sausage tube up with water or air, I think water usually, and it rises up higher than the river. So it backs the river up to that height until the river flows over the top. So technically it's not really a dam, it's a weir. And weirs can be electrified. This is the dam in Lawrence is actually a weir this, and it's electrified. Okay. Yeah, so it could generate power. And then then the river would back up, however height that is, take it up, say, another 10 feet.
Right.
It would be a lot wider. It would be deeper. There's places where you hit bottom in that river. The Kansas is very, very shallow. And you could pull the weir that's upstream right now, a pilings weir for Water One, and there's some. They impounded a little bit of water so that the water district could draft during a drought. That could go away, and you could take a speedboat to Lawrence. But most importantly, the river would be a little more clear because that soil particles would precipitate down. Essentially, be a long linear lake with a high rate of exchange in the middle of the metro, and it would have a constant height that you could build infrastructure to, and it would vastly increase the property values on both sides of that river. And if there were threats of a flood, you let the water out of the sausage tube, and it lies flat on the bottom of the river, so you get the full blast.
That's incredible.
It'd be cool.
It'd be super cool.
It would really become a signature feature for the Kansas City Metro.
Yeah. Yeah. One other place I know that I've been to that did there's been a lot of cities that have done different things with their rivers. Columbus, Georgia was one where they actually started doing like kayaking in the river right there in downtown and turned it into a recreational deal.
Never been there.
And it's pretty, but Oklahoma City did some stuff like that too. You mentioned, it's really, really pretty clever.
Olympic training ground for rowing.
So how do you operate a bridge like this during the winter?
Well, the bridge is a public crossing, so the gates open at each end. It's secured at night, in the morning and close at night when the amenities shut down. So because we got a lot of assets out there, but it's open as a public crossing every day, even in January and February when the amenities are closed.
Okay.
It's just too cold in Kansas City to try to keep water from freezing. We bring in water on the south side. There's a utility chase out there, and we take the sewage out, and they're heat traced and wrapped, but it's still too cold hanging out there in space.
Yeah.
And it's too cold for our staff and for customers. So we go to South America for a month or two and come back.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So how much attention has this gotten now that you're open and things are cooking?
Oh, got a rash of attention that first day. All the local TV stations were there, and I think the local newspaper, the Star and the Business Journal didn't, but the project gets about as much attention as we want to. We've been trying to lay low for the last couple of years. We didn't really want to be in the public eye until we were done.
Right.
But it gets a lot of attention from far away. Weirdly, we made the cover of the Irish Times 2 weeks ago.
That's interesting.
They had a reporter traveling across America, and he took a fascination with this, and it became a front page story. As we gear up for the World Cup, though, we're working with a local PR firm, and we're going to reach back out. We've been in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and Lonely Planet and others, and we'll probably go back to them now that we're done when the time's right.
And now that you're operating, are you seeing other things that you already want to tweak or do differently?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's little things that, there's a lot of sand in the gears still. When it rains, it drips on the bartenders. We're working on sealing that up. There's a place where the bridge comes through the roof, right?
Yeah.
The gates were rowdy and misbehaving. They got electric openers on them that weren't working right. There's a lot of little stuff like that. We got about
Mm-hmm.
a list of about 20 of those kind of things. But I do not have any visions yet for additional construction. Would like to create a little shade out on that western truss. We are going to hang some screens, TV screens out there for the World Cup. We're going to have a lot of visitors to town, and that would be a fun place to watch the games and to party on the bridge. But, in June, July in Kansas City, you're going to need some sun protection.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So what, if you're talking to other people who have wild ideas or have a dream like that, what would you say to somebody who says, why can't I do X, Y, or Z?
Well, it's good to have dreams, and even crazy dreams can come true. And this was a crazy dream, and a lot of people put money in it early on. Which, looking back, I'm kind of amazed, frankly. But I think you got to be honest with yourself and keep asking yourself, is this really viable? Is it really going to work? Especially after you get out on that limb, because we're all inclined to sunk cost thinking. It's like, I'm this far in, I'm going to, what do you say to a guy who's dug himself a hole, quit digging. I don't know, my wife and I, a very loving, patient wife through this process, and thank God she had a job. Many times we ask ourselves, can this really work? Because there were some existential moments where we thought, I might have to hang this thing up, and seek a lot of advice, look at things from different angles, be willing to let go of the ideas. We all love our own ideas, and often other people come up with better ideas. You just got to go with the best idea, not my idea. And if you really think it's going to work, and you think there's a path, keep digging.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Mike, I think it's one of the most incredible projects I've seen anybody do, and I've seen a lot of projects. So
it's crazy. The whole thing. I can't believe it. I had no idea.
Just unbelievable.
I'm a very ordinary guy.
Yeah. Well, just unbelievable. Congratulations to you and the perseverance to do this. And working through a long construction stoppage that would end most people right there. That's an incredibly difficult thing to deal with on a lot of different fronts. So just to have the perseverance to see this through and then actually see it successful. I talked to some friends afterwards, and you may or not realize this or may not feel this way. I don't know, but I feel like this is immediately one of the icons of the city. It's already, to me, it's obvious that this is going to be a thing that people associate with Kansas City.
We hope so. It's a legacy for everyone involved.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you and everybody else involved. And thanks for telling me a little bit about the story.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been a messy story, but in a certain light, we're just getting started. Now the fun's starting. And if this is a project you're interested in, I just encourage you we're on social media, all the usual channels, Rock Island Bridge. We're on the web, and we're programming the bridge. There's regattas, there's live music many nights a week, pop-ups, makers fairs. We've got, I don't know, 100 ideas that we're going to try out.
Yeah.
It's a new kind of town square over a river.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. And we'll be out there quite a bit. So,
yeah.
All right, Mike, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. See you over the river.
Yep.